Hi, Mike Anderson here. We're interviewing people who are part of Berks County's history. They're members of the Berks County Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And with us today we have Dave Mell. Dave, you've been around for
Good to see you.
a long time. Well, I mean, not as long as I have been around, but
not much less.
Okay, you're from Berks County?
Yes.
Originally? And
grew up in Fleetwood, went to Fleetwood School District, went to Kutztown College, and been playing in the area. Yeah. I remember coming to see bands you performed in.
Yeah, back when you were a youngster. I was an older guy.
You weren't that much.
You're catching up to me.
Yeah.
Well, so did you start? You play guitar now. That's the most famous thing we hear you play. You play harmonica as well.
Actually started in, I think it was elementary, perhaps. I'm not sure it was elementary or junior high school, playing a cornet. That was the first instrument. And after a while, I kind of evolved into playing I got more interested in performing with guitar, and had friends who were playing guitar. Wanted to do that. So that, I think my gateway drug was probably my dad's ukulele.
Oh,
I would pick around on that.
And now it's coming full circle. People are playing ukulele a lot more. Huh?
They are, yeah. But that was where the interest in stringed instruments started for me. And I had friends who were playing guitars at that time, and I would watch, wishing I was involved in the playing of the guitar, and then eventually bought one and started to play as well.
You had influences at that time? Besides the ukulele being there.
The stuff that was on the radio at the time. I mean, I really enjoyed the Beatles, the Stones. Steppenwolf was a big one for me. Enjoyed that band. The Doors, of course, and early Fleetwood Mac. Things that were, I guess you would say, late '60s into the early '70s. Probably left their biggest mark on me. A lot of British rock, and then with my interest in that, you would see that bands like the Stones or the Doors or the Allman Brothers were doing stuff from blues artists, and so that I traced that back. After listening to their takes on, say, a Muddy Waters or a B.B. King or a Howlin' Wolf number, you'd go, I got some curiosity about this. I want to go and see what the original artist was. What is this? Yeah. Where did this come from?
Yeah.
So that was really a fantastic thing for me to see the original American black blues artists.
And how old were you at this time?
I guess when I started playing the guitar, I was probably in my late teens, early 20s. I didn't start as early as some people. I wish I had, but yeah.
Well, great. Well, you're still playing it now. You're playing everywhere. And you've played with a number of bands between when you started and where you are now.
Yes, a lot of different styles of bands, and I think that was an important thing. Being able to play, for instance, there was a time I played in bands that were doing wedding reception material. I played briefly in a country band. I played in lots of rock bands. Played in a soul band, funk soul band. And eventually back into doing classic rock again. And at some point I said, I really don't want to wait till I'm 50 years old to do blues. I really am enjoying this, and it speaks to me. And that's not the only thing we do, or I do, but that was an important part of what influenced me. So I decided, I don't know when it was exactly, right before 2000, that we were going to do we're going to actually take some time and spend some time doing a four-piece blues, like a Chicago blues type of thing. Guitar, bass, drums, harmonica. And that was very enjoyable.
Sure.
You can interpret that music a little bit more freely than you could do with things that are on the radio that are much more familiar. It will accept your interpretation more readily than very familiar pop music or rock music. Now, the older rock music you go back to, I think that has some leeway also for interpretation. But the blues was where that started for me, being able to develop it. And as we played the blues for about maybe 5 years straight, maybe 4 or 5 years straight blues, eventually my wife came on board, and it expanded into doing R&B. and then back into doing a big variety of blues, R&B, classic rock.
Which is what you're doing now.
That's where we're at now.
Yeah. But even the classic rock you do is blues inspired.
I think much of it is.
You've added a lot of that to it.
Yes.
So, yeah, it sounds great. What were the names of some of the bands that you played with locally, anyway, that people might recognize?
Okay, I'm going to try to recall this.
Okay. Yeah.
I think there was probably the first one that anyone might remember would be a band called Distance. Then there was a band called Paragon. And there was a band that was with Dave Klein, actually.
Oh,
yeah.
Dave's been around?
Yeah, we go back that far. We did a band called Night Flight after that. Played in a band called Living Color, the Dan Yote Band, the John King Band, and ultimately the Jigsaw Blues Band, which eventually turned into the Dave Mell Blues Band. I know I'm missing a couple in there. I wish I could.
Well, that's you've come up with a lot, and a lot of musicians have come and gone through.
Oh yeah.
Now we played at the Magical History Tour thing that the Berks History Center put together a couple of years ago. That was kind of a nice way for some of these old musicians some of these experienced musicians to come together again and
it was
strike up some new friendships as well.
Getting a chance to be on the bill with bands we would go to see in our youth, and being on the same bill with bands like Uncle Drew and Auburn and I get Zeus, Faith,
Faith, yeah.
Getting to rub elbows with those kind of folks, that was exciting for me.
And a lot of the bands actually got together again after that. After they did a reunion, they said, let's play once in a while. So, a couple of concerts coming up. And, that experience has probably shaped your musical career as well, playing with different people.
Yes.
You're doing some blues, I would say, jams. That's pretty much it. You get a lot of people coming in. Does that influence your career as well?
That's fun. Like, interacting with people that you don't normally play with brings more out of you as a musician. You get to expand what you would normally listen to, and you have to really listen. You have to adapt to what the person you're backing up or jamming with is going to do, and likewise with them. So there's a lot of interaction there, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah. It's mostly positive. Sometimes you find yourself in places you don't necessarily want to be, but
it runs the gamut.
But finding yourself a way out of it is the fun part about it.
Yeah.
You all work together.
Yeah, it's good. It's a good experience.
Yeah, tell me some of the gigs that you played. You played all over the place, and the music industry has changed over the years as far as where you play and how much you get paid to play and how you promote yourself. Everything is different than it was 20 years ago.
I would say
10 years ago.
At the beginning there was high school dances, there was church dances, there were swimming pool splash parties.
Yeah.
Remember that?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I started out doing those kind of things. You'd play in high schools, or you'd play at junior high schools and swim parties. Eventually going into restaurants and bars, performing like that, right up until playing in the bigger venues, maybe I guess country clubs and things like the History Tour. I had the good fortune to be able to tour the former Soviet Union twice, performing with a friend's band, and also played up at B.B. King's in Manhattan, a little bit in Philadelphia, some venues around there. A lot of stuff around here primarily, and the surrounding counties, Lehigh and Lancaster as well, Schuylkill.
Do you miss the variety of places you can play around here, or have you just adapted to it different?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, it's a shame that some of the types of venues that were available for the people starting out, some of those opportunities are no longer. Well, now people will hire a DJ, or they'll have karaoke where they used to have live music. So that's kind of a real shame, especially for the younger people who would benefit from the experience of doing that. Where now they can't really. It's different. One person getting up and singing along with a machine, or listening to a DJ than young people getting up there, as primitive as their ability may be at that time. It's that formulative experience is invaluable.
Right.
And I guess they're still getting those experiences somewhere.
Well, they're trying. I know the Reading Musical Foundation helps to establish venues where people can get earlier in their career some performance venues where it is a different thing.
Bringing people to young
playing with live
together.
musicians and Berks Jazz Fest, they have the Get Jazz Ed program.
That's
which
wonderful.
They bring a lot of young people in and put them on stage and say, play. It's different than playing along with pre-recorded music.
Right.
I mean, sure, you can get your practice in with the pre-recorded, but there's a whole different connection playing with the musicians.
Right. You find out what works and what doesn't work. That goes for what you have to bring to the table in terms of your improvisation, what kind of repertoire will go over, what won't, and how you can expand things. Playing. There's no real substitute for taking things in front of the ultimate decision maker, who is the audience. They're going to tell you what's going to work and what's not. You're going to find out what will work and what won't work. And sometimes it's a pleasant surprise. Sometimes it's not so pleasant.
Well, you also write your own music and produce your own music, some
Right.
CDs that you send. I mean, there's a nice thing to putting together a recording and massaging it a little bit and getting it just where you want it. It's not quite the same as playing in front of an audience, but I'm sure the two work tandem. You learn from the audience and then you put it into your recording abilities.
I have found that some of our earlier releases, after just like what we were talking about, they sound a certain way when you record them and then you release it. Then you take it out and play, and you wish, oh boy, I wish we would have played this longer, and this really evolved into something a little bit more exciting now.
Yeah.
Not that it was bad on the original recording, but things evolve, and you find out, like I said, what works and what you can do with a piece of music in front of an audience that you wouldn't experience, you wouldn't figure that out in the studio.
Well, and plus you get to play with different musicians on gigs, and you get to hear how they interpret your music.
Right.
And sometimes it's good, and you think, well, but that's I guess the experience of growing with your music.
That interaction is everything.
Now you write your own music.
We do some of it. Yeah.
So what's your inspiration for writing?
Oh,
I know that's one of those dumb questions.
That could be anything.
It's important.
What the mood you're in that day, the interaction with your family and maybe co-workers, people you're working with, that will influence what you want to write about. My wife does the majority of the lyrical content of our originals. Mm-hmm. Not that she's the only one, but she does the bulk of that. So she would be better equipped to handle from a lyrical standpoint, those questions. But as far as the inspiration for the chords and the riffs, it could be what I was listening to earlier that week or the week before, or something I heard on the radio or in a TV show, and saying, "Oh yeah, I remember that. I think I could do something in that vein." So I guess those would be inspirations that you could say for original material.
Yeah, excellent. Oh, you played a number of gigs locally and in New York, wherever all the places you were talking about. Any memorable gigs? Things that we can talk about here. There's got to be some unusual or fun experiences that you can relate.
Yeah. Well, there's a big variety of types of engagements we've performed. I guess the one people always like to ask about is when we played nudist resorts. Did you have to play in the nude?
Yeah.
And I love to say, only the first set, which is
what happens after that.
Yeah.
Nobody. Yeah.
But no, other than some of the bigger places. It was a big thrill playing up at B.B. King's for me in Manhattan. That was a blast. The experience there was you're actually on stage for about 6 hours where we played, and you could see people would come in from all over the world. In your first set, you may see some people there from New York, then you see people from Japan in your second set, Texas, England, and that was just nice to be able to play for. Now that wasn't my band; I was part of a friend's band, but we were playing blues, and did that maybe a dozen times in Manhattan with B.B. King's. Also, playing over in the former Soviet Union was quite a remarkable experience. See how much they embrace. They love American roots music. I would say jazz and blues.
Wow.
And I am reminded that one of the people over there it was in the circle of. He was kind of the liaison between one of the opera houses we played and the band. He was Ukrainian, but he listened to the BBC in his youth, so he was pretty fluent. We could speak easily.
Yeah.
But the other people hadn't had that the benefit of that kind of background, so he was pretty much the guy who would interpret what we were saying. We did radio interviews and everything over there. What I wanted to say was, they took a vote apparently. Who of all the people that you could see from the United States, who would you like to have come over here to the Soviet Union to perform? B.B. King.
Wow.
That was who they would love. That was the consensus. So we were pretty much right at home. They were really ready for what we were offering.
What were the radio interviews? English? I mean, obviously.
No, they were in Ukrainian,
and you had
which is
translator?
apparently different from Russian. Ukrainian and Russian are not identical, from what I've told. I don't speak either, but he was the person who would interpret. The interviewer would say, "Okay, Mike, where do you play in the United States?" And he would interpret. He would tell this. Vladimir was the guy's name, and he would tell us what the interviewer was asking, and then we would respond, and he would talk back to them and tell them our response.
Wow, nice.
It was.
Talk about memorable. That's memorable. That's it.
And the show, my recollection of the show, one of the shows over there in this opera house was, they had the American flags draped over the balconies. So they were doing everything to make us feel comfortable.
Wow.
After the show, and one of the things that was very different was when we would perform before you'd perform the song, they gave a background of who wrote it and the artist. It's just kind of, I guess, a Soviet tradition, the way they would address what the song's about. You have to go through that, and then you would then you'd play the song, and then they would be pretty appreciative afterwards. After the show, but this was in between every song, which is not what we're used to. You want to keep the thing flowing, but that was very different. After the show, the dressing room was swarmed with people wanting autographs. We literally signed autographs there till the pens ran out of ink.
Wow!
It was really a nice experience. Kind of spoiled.
Well, no, I mean it's nice. I mean, back in earlier days, that must have been tough for to have American music and
yes,
but they appreciated it.
Did you ever have a chance to play anywhere like that, or
no,
in Europe at all?
No, never. No.
I know there's some people from Lehigh Valley that used to annually go over to Germany and play, but that was the closest I had ever heard of until this opportunity came up.
My closest was the Blues Alley down in Washington.
In Washington?
That's as closest I came to the United States government anywhere.
Well, you've been doing a variety of different types of things also.
I've had a great experience.
And like I said on the phone to you, you're a triple threat, Mike. You play the flute and the sax, and you play the harmonica better than you're willing to admit.
Oh, well, thanks.
Really?
But you're a staple here in Berks County history, and it's nice that people get to hear that you played.
Yes.
Yeah, the club up in New York. And that's
BB's,
BB's King's Club. That's not open anymore. I think
they closed that.
Just within the past year.
Yeah,
that's a shame. Well, it's tough. The music business, as we mentioned, is a little tougher than it was back when we started out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's young people coming up through the ranks.
In some ways, and in some ways, there's some things where now if you have your own recording equipment, you can produce your own product and get it out to the public, which you were at the mercy of a record label.
I was going to mention that.
That's one of the nice things. Yeah, things have changed a lot. wow, if we had had access to YouTube and people showing you exactly how to play this and how to play that in our time.
Oh my God, yeah.
You know, it was the turntable and the needle and putting it back 1,000 times.
Trying to find lyrics was tough.
Lyrics,
Yeah.
and the instrumental passages as well. That's really how I started.
Yeah, but you know, how do you recommend kids get started now? I mean, just
do it and get out amongst your peers and go see other people, and don't limit yourself to seeing one style of music. You know, the radio was so much more diverse. I would say even in the 70s, as late as the 70s, but certainly in the 60s, you would hear all kinds of things on radio. The variety was just, there's nothing like that now that I hear on the radio.
Well, I remember back when, you know, Uncle Drew was started, it was, you know, there was the Motown thing going, there was Crosby, Stills, Nash kind of folk stuff going, and the Byrds. There's also, you know, Blood, Sweat, and Tears in Chicago, the horn bands. There's a lot of influences all at one time. It was a good time to grow up.
Well, at what was it, WMMR down in Philadelphia, they would play such a, you know, you'd hear Virgil Fox, then you'd hear the Grateful Dead, then you'd hear Led Zeppelin, then they'd play a Beatles track, then they'd, you know, you never knew, and the folk rock.
And they play the long tracks, the album version, so you get to hear not just the 305 version for the singles.
And that was the golden era. I mean, I hate to sound that way, but there was more freedom, and it wasn't so calculated. What you would hear on the radio was not nearly as calculated, to my thinking, as it is now.
Yeah.
So those influences were more readily available to people who were coming up, and we were just at a great time, I think.
Yeah, I think so too.
You know, we didn't have YouTube to go watch how the guys would play this or whatever it may be, but we had the diversity of influences that I don't think is happening now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say get out to see different styles of music, and get out and amongst other people. Go to jam sessions, go to open mics. I would recommend that, certainly.
Yeah. Anything else you'd like to add that I haven't covered? And
I think we've been over most of what I expected.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it was so good to have you here, Dave.
Thank you, Mike.
And hope to see you around for many years.
Well, I hope we cross paths and you come out and sit in with us again sometime.
Oh, I'd love to. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks.
You're welcome.